was perversely amusing to see how many pronouns were being used by the lawyers and the judge. He, him, she, her, they, them. It was all over the map. And I don't think there was anything nefarious or cheeky afoot here. Rather, we're all human. And no matter how woke one is, it's kind of hard to refer to a man sporting a goatee as a she, her, wouldn't you say? Another baffling thing, D'Entremont's legal aid lawyer, Mario Nabu, often referred to him as Des, short for Desiree. Yet, as I previously mentioned, Des swore himself in as Cody D'Entremont. Good golly, Miss Molly, even more confusion. Oh, and to add to this ongoing confusion, I left out a key point of Cody's transitioning history. That's because after he was arrested by Windsor police in April of 2023, Cody began identifying as a cat. No, you heard me correctly. Cody went from male to feline. Whether Cody was a female pussycat or a tomcat, well, you got me on that one, folks.
Suffering succotash.
I wish I was making all this up, but I'm not. In fact, when I ventured to Windsor last summer, I was able to interview a resident of the Welcome Center who told me that when she last heard about Cody, he had indeed morphed from a transgender into a trans species. Here, check it out.
Is it a matter of political correctness, wokeism?
They should make a shelter for people that are indifferent.
As well, some shelter employees took the stand at D'Entremont's trial last week. They testified that they found the complainant in a distraught state on the day of the alleged rape. They described her as panicked, emotional, crying, and in distress. The employees consoled her and offered her any assistance she might require. Well, at least those Welcome Center employees seem to be displaying a little empathy. Quite a change of pace, I would say, based on my visit to the Welcome Center last summer, in which two employees confronted me and my camera woman. They seemed way more concerned about the misgendering of Cody / Desiree / Sylvester than the sexual assault that had allegedly taken place at the shelter back in the springtime. Here, check it out.
How does a biological male get into a female shelter, ma'am?
It was a transgender woman. So that's my only comment that I'm going to say about that.
Okay, but at the end of the day, that's a man, right?
Transgender woman.
Okay, but don't you see that there's an inherent danger?
That's my only comment. She's a transgender woman, so we take trans women here because they are women. So
we just find it is egregious and outrageous that you're essentially letting the fox into the hen house, a biological male with women who, well, let's face it, this is a safe space for real women, and you don't have a problem with that.
Also, it's not that. We also do have male clients here as well, if they're a part of a family unit. But when it comes to transgender women, they are still women, and we take things very seriously when things happen to our clients, and we go from there. But we do support trans women still, regardless, in general. So I'm not going to comment on this anymore.
Okay.
Because I am uncomfortable that you guys are filming here. Okay. Regardless of you guys being on public property, respectfully, I think you guys just need to carry on.
Well, Lady Lafrette's number, if you have any more questions, please don't film me. Thank you.
Well, you're in a public place.
No, I'm actually at my workplace, but please don't film me.
Well, there's no expectation of privacy in an open place like this, ma'am.
We are going to have to call the police.
Okay, for standing on a sidewalk?
Don't film me. Thank you.
Okay, but you approached us, you interrupted us.
I'm approaching you because you're filming my clients and our property.
No, we're not filming your clients. You're quite wrong about that. And what's your opinion of a biological man staying with biological females?
I'm just going to call the police.
Wow. This is another example of how 20-something women, I think, are the biggest threat to biological women at large. They have been indoctrinated into actually believing that so-called trans women are real women. And so it is that it is now open season on female shelters and female prisons and female sports leagues. I truly believe these are really self-hating women. I should also note, folks, that the only other media in attendance for the trial was a reporter with CBC Windsor. I guess the Windsor Star and the Windsor radio stations and other Windsor media thought it was just one big nothing burger, completely unworthy of coverage, which is really odd because when D'Entremont was originally arrested, this story received international media coverage. But then again, in Canada, the mainstream media is funded by Justin Trudeau, who is all in when it comes to radical transgenderism. So maybe it's best not to make waves with reportage that might offend the Jonathan Yaneves of the world. Jeez, what cowards, what whores. But predictably, the CBC story also avoided addressing the transgendered elephant in the room, and it avoided any mention of pronouns. Cody/Desiree was simply referred to as D'Entremont, and as a person, clearly it was a little too third rail for the state broadcaster to delve into the potential motive of a man pretending to be a woman in order to reside in a female shelter space. And of course, absolutely no mention of Cody's transition into a cat. But talk about burying the lead. It is these details, I would argue, that make this particular sexual assault case stand out from any other sexual assault case currently being heard in any other jurisdiction in the world. Now, on day 2 of the trial, closing arguments were made. D'Entremont's lawyer, Mr. Nabu, made the case that his client was clear and concise in his denial about the assault that allegedly happened that day. He also claimed that the complainant has serious credibility issues and that she tried to backtrack and reword what she had previously said. As well, he noted that when the complainant's pajama bottoms underwent forensic analysis, there was no trace of D'Entremont's DNA. The Crown attorney, Aniko Coughlin, argued that the complainant was credible and reliable and was responsive to the questions asked of her. Furthermore, any inconsistencies in her testimony were minor and were reasonable and understandable due to the emotional distress that she endured. Now, personally speaking, the lack of D'Entremont's DNA on the complainant's pajama bottoms would appear to be a red flag, but then again, it wasn't clear if the complainant had washed her pajamas before turning in the garment to law enforcement, which occurred more than a week later. In the final analysis, Mr. Nabu made the point that there was reasonable doubt, and Madame Justice Sharon Murphy agreed. And frankly, I'm still scratching my head regarding the judge's closing remarks. Namely, she said that she had found the complainant credible, but that she did not find her to be reliable. Now, I had to look up some case law to understand the difference here. And here it is, according to the legal website, alexi.com, quote, credibility and reliability are different concepts. Credibility has to do with a witness's veracity, whereas reliability has to do with their ability to accurately observe, recall, and recount events in issue, end quote. Truth be told, folks, I'm still scratching my head over the nuance here. But regardless, D'Entremont was acquitted. By the way, some other relevant points regarding Mr. Cody D'Entremont that were not touched upon during the trial. For example, I made mention that until he had to testify, D'Entremont occupied the prisoner's box. Now, why would that be? Well, that's because that on January 28 of this year, D'Entremont was charged with assault causing bodily harm and assault choking. This obviously violated his bail conditions. He hasn't been tried for those charges yet. But I find it somewhat disturbing that either D'Entremont is no stranger to violence or that he has enormous bad luck when it comes to people falsely accusing him of nefarious behavior. And another thing, while the judge spoke of the complainant's credibility and reliability, what about the credibility and reliability of Cody D'Entremont? D'Entremont is a biological man with all of his male bits and pieces still firmly affixed, but he is claiming to be a woman. Is this credible? Could it be he is a man gaming the system as a means of gaining access to female shelter space? Is that too much to ask? Apparently so. And why would the staffers at the shelter allow him to reside with vulnerable, real women? Is this credible? And what about D'Entremont's subsequent transitioning into another species, going from Homo sapiens to Felis catus? Is that credible? Well, I say no on all counts. Look, I'm no psychiatrist here, but to me, the behavior of Cody D'Entremont / Desiree Anderson / the Trans Cat of Windsor are all tangible, telltale indicators of somebody who is very likely batshite crazy. Yet, because we reside in a woke joke biosphere, we dare not use the words transgender and insane in the same sentence, do we now? Transgenders are special. Transgenders are a protected class. Heck, the Toronto Police Service now has a police cruiser painted in the trans colors that offers free rides to transgenders. The Windsor Police, for that matter, has a male officer pretending to be a female, much to the chagrin of the rank and file. But yet this transgendered officer is a paragon of diversity when it comes to the brass. Meanwhile, the Paris Olympic Games just wrapped, in which we had to stomach the obscenity that was male boxers caving in the faces of female opponents. And don't you dare complain about that, mind you, for you shall be labeled a hater or a bigot or even a transphobe, and no label is worse than one suggesting transphobia. In the final analysis, was there a reasonable doubt that Cody D'Entremont brutally raped a vulnerable woman on March 23rd, 2023? Maybe. It was, after all, a he said, she said scenario. But if I had been on the bench, I would have still have convicted this sick puppy, or is it a sick kitty? Clearly, this man / woman / cat is a grifter. Clearly, he is unstable. Clearly, once upon a decade, this person would have been incarcerated in a rubber room right next to the guy believing himself to be Napoleon Bonaparte or Jesus Christ. But no, it would appear that when it comes to transgenderism, there is this unspoken strategy afoot that is akin to that rule in baseball in which a tie always goes to the runner. As I said, when it comes to transgenders, we are talking about a protected class of people. Now, I will return to Windsor when D'Entremont stands trial for assault causing bodily harm and assault choking. I imagine this trial will prove equally fascinating for all the wrong reasons. But in the meantime, let me conclude with the most pertinent question, aside perhaps from where are the feminists? And that question is this: when it comes to these gender-bending grifters who are clearly gaming the system for their own wicked fulfillment, who do you have more contempt for? The grifters or the gatekeepers? In other words, those persons who refuse to do the right thing because of the ideological noose around their necks that is political correctness.